So the other day we saw fellow Is it douchey to say fellow YouTuber?
No, I mean technically it's not an act.
Technically it's true, but we're not on even a remotely similar level. Alright, today, a few days ago...
We're like 1/600th of the size.
A few nights ago we saw Ralphthemoviemaker's Lover. Connor, what is the plot of Lover?
Lover is a movie where Ralph the Movie plays Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, mixed with Jared Leto's character from Requiem for a Dream, and he falls in love with a girl who is a hoe and fucks all these dudes, and she has to go to rehab for drugs, and then he kills everybody. So Aiden, what did you think of Lover?
Okay. So first off, I'm gonna be nice. This was made when Ralph was like 19 and he was just starting film school. It feels like a film school project, but it's a pretty good one. And it's impressive that he made a feature-length movie at that age. Right?
Yes.
And I'll give him credit for that. I will. But I'm not going to go too easy on this. The movie obviously wears all of its influences on its sleeve. There's a lot of drive in there. There's scenes lifted directly out of American Psycho. There's a lot of Taxi Driver. There's a lot of...
The drug scenes are pulled one for one from Requiem for a Dream, basically.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of little issues. Like, there's some cool shots in the movie. Not a whole ton. Obviously, there's like limitations. This movie was made on $10,000, which is literally fucking nothing. And there's some limitations on what they could do. But a lot of the movie is, how do I put this? The movie has this seasonal format where he filmed it over the course of a year in the actual seasons, but it doesn't add anything to the movie. Like, there's these big, flashy title cards that say what season it is, but the seasons aren't, like, evenly divided. There's not, like, interesting things in every season. Because it starts in,
September?
It's...
Because it starts when she starts college.
Yeah, it starts in, like, fall.
Around then.
And in fall, he meets the girl, and whatever, gets the plot started. And then there's the winter stuff and whatever. But, like, in spring, there's just nothing that goes on. Like, there's the big title card for spring, and there's, like, a bunch of exposition and shit. Like, nothing happens. And then it transitions to summer where the actual shit takes place. I don't remember the exact order that they come in, but, like, the seasons don't mean anything. And originally he was going to have these color motifs to go with it, and he said it looked like shit, so he threw it out. The season thing, it's just, like, a weird remnant of an earlier movie and probably should have just been dropped.
Yeah.
The other thing, you know, I'm not going to rail on the acting too hard because it's student film, it's a bunch of people he met in fucking film class. I get it. I get it. He made a $10,000 movie. He had what he had. The other thing that kind of gets me, though, is, the one thing I will say about the acting is there's these drug dealer characters that the girl he's obsessed with lives with, because she's a drug addict too, which isn't... The drug addict
thing...
She
has to go to rehab for drugs.
The drug addict thing with her isn't very well communicated. Like, there's a couple scenes where she's just, like, looking at jellyfish, but they don't really bring up the drug thing with her until very late in the movie. But, like, they have these characters who are supposed to be really intimidating. Well, first, the main character is supposed to be intimidating, and he's Ralph the Movie Maker. He's 5'6", chubby, curly-haired guy, curly-haired film student. But then the drug dealer gang people that are supposed to be really intimidating, who at one point come in and beat Ralph with pipes because they're so intimidating, are a scrawny Indian man who's even shorter than Ralph, the peanut butter gamer, and some guy who's never fully in frame. Like, I don't think the third guy has a single shot
There's
where
like
he's
one
not, like,
shot. He looks
cut
like
off.
a skinhead.
Like, no one in the movie... These are supposed to be intimidating characters, and they're not. If they were adults, it might have worked better. But working with what he had, it's just a little silly. The other big thing...
Sound editing was bad? Terrible?
Okay.
Awful?
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame him for that too much.
There were times it was fine, but the actors were a little bit mumbly. It was probably the issue more than anything.
There was a couple moments where the sound editing was good. First off, the music in the movie is really fantastic overall. There was a couple times where the sound editing was kind of cool, like when he's listening to her conversation through the bathroom and he like plugs his ear like that. There's a couple times where the sound editing works. Obviously, there's some bad sound editing because sound is fucking difficult. Like, I'm trying to... It's a student film. The movie feels like a student film, but it's a pretty decent student film. So I'm just touching on things that I think are, like, notably flawed with it, because it's impressive that he made it. I'm not gonna lie. But the other thing I wanted to bring up is the fucking... There's one thing I don't understand. Which is, okay, so they try to, the thing that gets muddled for me, this is probably my biggest complaint. Right in the middle of the movie, for some reason, Ralph invites a prostitute over and then kills her. And I don't get it. I don't understand why he does that.
I mean, I understand, like, the idea was that when he originally met, Delilah, or whatever her real name is, Christine or whatever.
Christina.
He was gonna kill her. Christina, whatever. He was gonna kill her because he roofied her drink and then decided not to kill her.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what's the point? And I think this is a big story issue. The story has tons of issues. The screenplay has a lot of issues. But the idea is that he's like this psycho killer. But I feel like based on what the character study showed in this final script, and he said he cut shit. But what the story shows in the final script, it would make so much more sense if he was so obsessed with this girl that's why he killed the drug dealers and then he killed her. Like, we don't need all these Patrick Bateman American Psycho scenes.
Yeah.
What we need we need the deterioration of this man's subconscious, which I don't think was very well shown. In the film.
That's what I was trying to get at. Like, it's not like. It's like the movie's trying to be a character study, and it's not like the girl treats him badly throughout the whole thing, and it's not like him being treated badly slowly wears on him until he finally snaps. It's like from moment one, he tries to drug her, and then for some reason he changes his mind, and it's one of the weirdest scenes in the movie because she's in the bathroom and he finds out she has a boyfriend. And so he decides not to drug her. And instead of just dumping out the fucking wine that's drugged while she's still in the bathroom, he makes this big show about it where she's like sitting on the couch and then he walks over and gives her an angry face and takes the wine away. But then he doesn't...
Yeah.
Like, he kisses her and hangs out with her. And she forces him to drive her to get banged by Chad and whatever. And the fucking scrawny Indian guy. But then in the middle of the movie... he just kills someone. And I think, like... I think the idea of him killing the prostitute was, like... he's taking out his anger at her on a woman as, like, a surrogate for her. But it doesn't really... it's not communicated well, so, like... add on top of the fact that he was trying to drug her at first, and then he kills this girl...
And
it just
the
makes
fact
him
that
seem
it was
like
shot almost entirely like the prostitute murder scene at his apartment in American Psycho. It literally felt like the same idea. Like he's at the kitchen islands looking for weapons while she's sitting there. What I think would be more effective is you don't have that. And what I did like is my kind of headcanon was when he originally drugged her, his plan was to date rape her or something, or
that's
like
what I figured.
or like kidnap her or something because he's lonely. Because he seems like a lonely character. That's what I deciphered from him, and then it turns out he's a psycho killer, which seems unnecessary. What I would have preferred, and what I think would have been more original, is if he was just like a weird lonely guy, like a rich weird lonely guy. We don't realize why he's kind of rich, but he has like this nice condo and stuff, and based on the establishing shots, it's in like a nice neighborhood in Boston or something. What I would have preferred is he's just some sort of lonely guy who has money, but he can't make proper human connections because he's kind of a sociopath, which I think is what he was going for, but then he was so inspired by American Psycho and he wanted to add more action to his drama that he decided to put more energy into making him this killer character, this somewhat of a slasher, which is what the prostitute thing ended up portraying, where I think it would have been more interesting if he was just really obsessed with this woman, which by the end of the film ultimately led him to murder.
Yeah. I think both the date rape scene and the prostitute killing take away from that. I think it would have been better if it was just like, you know, he tries really hard for this girl and she mistreats him and eventually it causes him to just like lose his shit with rage. He's an incel with rage. I think the drugging scene and the murder scene both kind of take away from that.
I agree. To an extent.
So that's kind of my main stuff with it. I think generally, to say some nice stuff, I think it's generally pretty well shot, and there's definitely some like creative shooting in there.
Right.
Especially given the incredibly constrained situation that this movie was shot under. Like, it's impressive that it could have.
The sound editing has issues, but sound editing on a lot of student films is god fucking awful.
Yeah, I mean,
so it
sound
could have sounded worse.
So fucking difficult. So yeah, basically, those are kind of like my major things. Also, I don't necessarily know that the movie had to be in black and white. I know he said that it was to tie into like, there's a couple scenes where you see Ralph watching these old cheesy movies and he has like this idea of love from these cheesy movies where he's like, where he just expects it to be like this fairy tale and he just gets constantly cucked and feels fucking miserable about it. And that's part of the reason the black and white was implemented, but also it was implemented because his color grading thing didn't work out.
Which I also think takes away that his character is somewhat of a Patrick Bateman type of character. I would have preferred almost more that he's just a lonely guy who's obsessed with this woman who won't give him the attention that he craves, or gives him attention but not in the way he desires.
Oh, I do have one more thing. There was a couple scenes, and this is a really minor thing, because I think it has something to do with the conversion of the video in some improper way. But there was a couple scenes where I noticed, I think they were ones that were shot in the dark, because the most noticeable point is when he's outside of the house where he kills the girl in the end, where there's like really bad compression artifacts. Like, it's in places where there are like really dark shadows, like really dark blacks, because I think they were shooting it at night, where you can see the compression,
almost like cloudy brown in the blacks.
Yeah, it's like you got the squares and the fuzzies inside.
Right.
It was pretty rare, and I'm not sure. Sometimes that can be caused by TV resolution. We were watching it on a fairly small TV.
I'm guessing it was.
I'm guessing it's partially
compression.
I'm gonna guess that this was edited digitally, obviously, because there were parts of the thing.
I think he said he edited it in Avid and one of the episodes or Downcast or something.
But yeah, there is some compression issues in the darker scenes, and again, I can't like really fault him for that, because that's just like, when you're making something on this budget, that's something that's out of your hands. But that's just something I also wanted to point out. And again, that could also be an issue with the Voodoo transfer. I'm not sure. I don't have this on Blu-ray or anything. But
right.
So yeah, that's kind of my general impressions of it.
We got it on
a very
Amazon
competent.
Prime, not Vudu, by the way.
So,
Just so if people are looking for it more than anything, not that I
it's
care
an
that much. To
it definitely it has qualities of student filmmaking, but it's also far more competent than the average student filmmaking.
Yeah.
Like, obviously the cast is young and inexperienced, but for what it is, there's like an amount of raw talent there that is impressive for the age of the person making it and the age of the people involved and the budget constraints and all that.
Much better than my Seabiscuit fan film. But I will say, if you like Ralph the Movie Maker's channel, it's only 99 cents. Probably wouldn't hurt to support the movie. Give it a watch.
Anyway, so what did you think generally?
Basically, a lot of the things you said I agree with. I'm kind of on the same page as you. The few things I want to add, as I kind of touched on, the story has issues. I feel like if you put this thing through one more draft, it would have worked so much better. Christine and Randy, who's the main... I don't remember what his name is. Ralph the Movie Maker's character, Howard, had a fairly strong relationship, and then it kind of just deteriorates. And I understand that you can't really show her being in the rehab for drugs
That would be
on this budget, but it would have been nice to see that deteriorate more. It would have been nice to establish the drug dealers a little more. Maybe see more early on signs, like within like the first act and second act, of Christine getting into drugs, or maybe not even getting into drugs, but if she's already on drugs, show more of that. But for the most part, I feel like one more draft to round out the story. I think like the killing of the prostitute was kind of unnecessary. I think what you needed to do was I feel like to make Howard work the way that at least I interpreted him in the movie would have been to kind of make him more of just like an awkward guy who has a hard time making friends, who gets mistreated by this girl, eventually snaps, kills the drug dealers and kills her, whatever. But I feel like it was kind of a missed opportunity putting him in this Patrick Bateman situation, because I don't think the screenplay presented him in a way where that makes sense, where Patrick Bateman in the American Psycho film makes sense.
I think it would have been nice to get a little... Like, I know Howard is kind of like intentionally left vague, but like the fact is Ralph the Movie Maker was like 19 when this was filmed, and he's a 19-year-old living in this incredibly fancy upscale apartment with 2 bathrooms and gigantic master bedroom and all this crap. And all we don't know, there's like nothing that we're ever told about him. Like, we don't know if he has any family or how he got this or any of this stuff. Like, all we ever see him do is just stalk this girl and drive her around to get fucked by Chads.
I wouldn't mind. There's ways to show that without directly saying, I'm going to go to my job now as the CEO of the bank. I'm a kid genius.
Yeah.
But there's other ways you can show that. Like, you can have him kind of just be socially awkward. You can say, where did you get all this money? Oh, I just invested well or something. Who cares, really? But it would be nice to get more background on the character. A little can tell a lot. The other thing, I think, is cinematography. There were a couple shots I thought looked kind of weird. There was a lot of really nice shooting in this film, don't get me wrong. I think there's way more impressive shots for what it is than bad shots, but there were a couple shots I'm like, why? But, for the most part, who cares? Look at me, I'm half on camera. We're doing some fucking weird angles ourselves. I can't judge that much. The acting at times is bad. I thought the girl was a really nice actress for what she did. She did kind of mumble in scenes, but it is what it is for like a first time or early actress.
She was definitely
leading role. She was
as
really
far as acting goes. Like,
I mean, Howard's the main character, but she's the most developed. And they did a lot with her. So, for what it is, I thought she held the movie pretty well. Like I said, I wish there was more with the other side characters aside from Christine and Howard. But, you know, it's fine. I actually was fairly entertained with the movie, and I wasn't taken out of it too much that these were a bunch of young actors, and the only reason I ever bothered to watch this is because it's a Ralph the Movie Maker thing. I was kind of curious because he was talking about it on his podcast.
Yeah.
It was genuinely something I felt fairly invested in, even though I thought there was issues with it. Considering the context, I thought it was good. But at the same time, if this was something that came to theaters and was more than a student film you can watch for 99 cents based on an internet reviewer,
like if they translated this to like a real movie,
yeah. At the same
release
time,
it in theaters,
and even though it's derivative of a lot of things, I feel like a lot of student films are. Like, people make their student films derivative of Quentin Tarantino's style or whoever's style.
That's how you learn.
Until you develop your own style, you're gonna copy. I mean, it's like someone who paints or draws. You're gonna start by kind of copying other people's art, and then eventually coming up with your own style, coming up with your own designs, your own characters. So if a freshman feature film made by a YouTuber, that doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I do think actually that, I mean, more so, I've seen some YouTuber movies, like the fucking Nostalgia Critic ones. And as far as it goes, I mean, Ralph definitely has much more
talent as a filmmaker.
Yeah, he has
more capability.
He has a lot of capability.
Of the craft.
He has a lot of technical knowledge. Like, he knows what he's doing. He definitely has creative ideas. I don't think obviously this is a student film. You can
feel the heart more than something like... There's really two types of YouTuber movies, it feels like. There's the... I can... Like the fucking Shane Dawson, I want to be a director, so I'm going to put all this money towards a movie and a big crew and shit. So it's going to look professional, it's going to have professional sound, but it's going to be made on a bullshit script. It's not going to be directed very well because they don't have an understanding of that process. Then you have something like Doug Walker, where his films are just incompetent fan service fests.
Yeah.
But this feels like a legitimate story that Ralph wanted to tell. Yeah. While it's derivative, it still has talent. He knows how to direct people.
It's really, really... It's a very primitive form of Ralph's filmmaking. But I do think that there's, like, genuinely something to it, to the point where if he keeps making movies, I don't know what his plan is, but I think his next one would be a lot better than this. Like,
right.
There's like a seed of something good in there that just needs time to grow as he grows as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, overall, there's stuff here, and this shows potential for someone who will actually be able to make films in the future. I feel like if you gave him a bigger budget and actual actors, and, you know, just like a more...
time, money.
I guess like a mature brain, because I feel like overall, like, yeah.
It feels like the product of...
an 18-year-old slightly edgy brain. And not to say totally discredit it, but, you know, I feel like over time you're just going to learn to write better shit.
Yeah, you're going to have more experience in life, you're going to understand things.
And I mean, a lot of this too feels like, you know, he might have jumped the gun to to shoot the camera more. I feel like one or two more drafts and this could have been good. Like, maybe extend it out more so we can get a deeper character study on Christine and Ralph and their relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe make Ralph talk a little, or Howard talk a little more. But there's a lot of stuff here that's actually the inkling of a good movie. And considering everything, the actors you got were decent enough they could act. Not necessarily super well. No one's winning an Oscar from this. Yeah. But even like Ralph, who like I've watched a lot of his videos and he's a personality in those. I thought Ralph was honestly one of the worst actors in the movie. Not that he was terrible, but everyone was okay enough at acting. But I was never distracted to the point where I'm sitting here thinking, oh, this is Ralph the Movie Maker pretending to be an edgy Patrick Bateman ripoff. Like, At least I saw him as a character, which I think is a bigger win than something like Nostalgia Critic, where you're like, is he supposed to be a Nostalgia Critic in like his films? Is he a Nostalgia Critic?
Yeah.
Is he a separate character? You have a million thoughts in your mind, and you just cannot decipher what the truth is. So overall, I thought it was, for what it is, good. So Aiden, when do you recommend Lover?
Probably. I don't like doing the caveats so much, but
We do them in every video that we don't recommend something. We're like, well, if you like fucking young adult novels,
I try not to.
Yeah,
You
I
do it,
definitely have huge caveat, man. That's fair.
It's a student film. If you can tolerate some fucking jank and obvious budget issues, I do think it's decent enough and short enough and cheap enough that it's probably worth your time, especially if you understand, Ralph the Movie Maker. If you're watching this, you probably know who that is.
Probably.
So I'm gonna give it a light recommend. Like,
it's also only 99 cents on Amazon Prime.
If you're in if you can tolerate the fact that it's obviously low budget first film stuff, I think it's interesting enough to watch. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna make a complex caveat or anything. Just know what you're getting into. It's good. I would generally kind of recommend it if you can tolerate the obvious issues that it has. So Connor, would you recommend Lover?
I mean, it's slow. It's definitely not for everyone. I wouldn't go out there and recommend, because I feel like, okay, we probably have a handful of people that are more legitimate film fans. I'm sure a lot of our fans are Ralph the Movie Maker based, but if you're like a fan of like more exhilarating movies, which I feel like is a lot of what we review on this channel are like Hollywood products.
Yeah, we definitely.
You're probably not gonna love this movie, even if this was the fucking Citizen Kane if this was a Citizen Kane of student films. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Even if this was even if this was amazing, I feel like if you're a fan of Ralph the Movie Maker and you like more experimental films and you're fine with kind of like a student quality, then yeah, I'd recommend it. But for most people, if you don't know who Ralph the Movie Maker is, I'm not going to sit here and be like, watch Lover.
No, definitely
your
not.
life.
Definitely not.
If you're a fan of Ralph the Movie Maker and want to support him and support a student filmmaker who probably has better things ahead if he continues on the path of making films, then I would definitely say it's worth a watch. It's not unwatchable for a student film, which most student films are. I'll say that.
Yep.
So light recommend, depending on if you fit those categories. So yeah, surprisingly not as terrible as it could be.